In the name of God, greetings to all my dear viewers. I hope you are doing well. Ladies and gentlemen, the reality is that sometimes we live among people who may even be among those closest to us. Unfortunately, some people behave, speak, and interact with us in ways that hurt us. Not by punching us or physically beating us, but sometimes they wound us with their words, with these very words and expressions. They do not shout, and they do not necessarily argue with us, but every time you sit next to them, spend time with them, or have a phone conversation with them, they drain your energy, damage your self-confidence, and take away your peace of mind. The biggest mistake that happens when dealing with such people is that we think we absolutely have to defeat them. No, that is not the reality. Real power lies in disarming them, not necessarily in treating them the way they treat us in order to defeat them. We need to learn the art of communicating with people. People come in all kinds: good, bad, kind, ill-tempered, grumpy, pessimistic, superficial, easily influenced. You can find all kinds of people in society and perhaps even among those around us and within our own families. We need to pay attention to the patterns. Therefore, if we can disarm them without fighting, without getting angry, and without becoming like them ourselves, then we have taken control of the situation. Pay very close attention to this subtle point. First, let me clear up a misunderstanding here. You see, when we talk about toxic people, using the term toxic does not necessarily mean that we are talking about evil people or people with mental illnesses. No, sometimes they are completely ordinary people. You have probably seen this yourself. I have sometimes seen people who have these feelings toward their own father, mother, spouse, colleague, or an old close friend. They say, "Every time we interact with this person, they cause us suffering and distress. They behave in ways that constantly damage our mental well-being." So pay attention to this. We want to address some very common issues in the everyday lives of many people. Issues that, unfortunately, are far from rare. Read the comments. Look carefully at the opinions people leave below videos. See how many suffering people are dealing with situations like this. So, what should we do? How can we interact with these people without fighting and without making ourselves even more stressed and emotionally exhausted? First of all, we need to know that these people have certain characteristics. When we say toxic people, some or all of these characteristics may be present in that person. Sometimes when you talk to them, they are constantly looking for ways to humiliate you, or they try to control you, or they behave toward you in a way that constantly makes you feel guilty. Sometimes they take advantage of your emotions. There may be emotional manipulation, playing with your feelings, lying, sometimes deceiving you, or portraying themselves as the victim in order to provoke an emotional response from you. They create constant stress. They continually send negative waves toward you. You call them just to see how they are doing, and they end up getting on your nerves. When you hang up the phone, you feel bad. Sometimes, all of us may even display these behaviors under certain circumstances. Well, these are not good behaviors. If we ourselves engage in them, we should realize that we too are behaving in a toxic way. We may be causing someone suffering without even being aware of it. The key question and the main answer in this video is, these people exist, so how should we deal with them? How should we behave toward them? I would like to share several methods and techniques with you, and these are very important. The first technique, and a very, very important point in disarming these people, is this: do not show emotional reactions. The greatest source of nourishment for toxic people is your emotional reaction. When you become angry, that is when they have achieved what they wanted. When you cry, when you start over-explaining yourself in order to defend yourself, they feel powerful because of the behavior and reaction they see from you. For example, someone says, "You have never cared about your family," even though you have. You may then start explaining, "No, that's not true. I have done this 100 times. I did that. I did this." And you know this person. You know that they will constantly repeat these statements, and your explanations will accomplish nothing. So the best response is not to keep trying to justify yourself and convince them. They will not be convinced. That is their game. Do you know what the best response is? That is your opinion. That's it. There is no need to defend yourself. Just say briefly, "That is your opinion." Then leave the situation without giving a long defense. Believe me, you may feel, "I didn't answer them." Won't that make them become even more arrogant? No. You have simply cut off their access to the energy they were feeding on from you. The second behavior and the second method is this. Set very clear and explicit boundaries in your communication with these people. People who behave toxically take advantage of boundaries within relationships when those boundaries are unclear or ambiguous. For example, they may decide to call you at any hour they want and expect you to answer. They enter your personal space without permission. They do not respect the decisions you make at all. So what does a boundary mean? It means, for example, that I make a clear commitment to myself and demonstrate that commitment through my behavior. After 9 p.m., I will not answer your calls. If you have something important to discuss, do it before 9. After 9, I have a boundary. My boundary is until 9 p.m. This is what setting a boundary means. Or, for example, my boundary might be, if you start shouting, I will no longer continue the conversation. That is my boundary. I will continue talking to you as long as you are not shouting. The moment you raise your voice, that's it. I will not continue. The other person needs to understand that once they start shouting, the conversation is no longer possible. If you set boundaries and then break those boundaries yourself every time, then in reality, there is no boundary. So set boundaries and be serious and firm about maintaining them. Do not be the one who breaks your own boundaries. The third technique, do not get drawn into the game of explaining yourself. Ladies and gentlemen, one of the traps that toxic people set for our emotions is forcing us to constantly defend ourselves. Every answer you give creates a new question. This cycle has no end with these kinds of people. Sometimes, do you know what the best response is? That was my decision. That's all. Without any additional explanation. I made this decision. Do not justify yourself. Do not give reasons. Do not explain why. Not at all. I made this decision. It means essentially, this is none of your business. But do not actually tell them, this is none of your business. That will create another argument. Look, these are very subtle techniques. I made this decision. That's it. You have not insulted them. You have not lost your temper. You have not done anything. Just carry on with what you are doing and continue living your life. These points are extremely important. The next technique is manage your feelings of guilt. Many of the people we refer to as toxic often use this issue against us. For example, what do they say? I did so much for you. If you loved me, if you were a good person. These statements are often more about controlled and healthy communication. Remember this important point. When someone makes you feel guilty with these kinds of statements, it does not always mean that you are actually in the wrong. Their technique is to use this kind of language to make you feel guilty internally. Of course, there are situations in which you really have failed in a responsibility. In that case, you should accept it, apologize, and make amends. That is not what I am talking about here. I am referring to situations in which you have genuinely done nothing wrong, but the other person talks to you in a way that makes you feel guilty. It is as though you failed somewhere, as though there was something you were supposed to do, but did not do. And they make you feel guilty and burdened by remorse. So pay very close attention to this. Another point that needs to be considered is that you should not forget that sometimes a person's character and their behavior are separate things. Separate the two. For example, do not tell someone, "You are a bad person." Instead, say, "The behavior you displayed is not acceptable to me." This is respectful, and it also reduces the likelihood of tension with these types of people. The next technique. You do not always have to respond. Ladies and gentlemen, some of you may think that being quick-witted and always having an answer is a skill. By God, always having a comeback is not necessarily a good quality. It should not be used everywhere. A person should respond where their response will actually have an effect. When dealing with toxic people, you do not always have to answer. If you want to protect your mental and emotional well-being, then respond selectively. If you do not care and simply want to vent your frustration and anger, that is another matter. But then you should also be prepared to deal with the psychological consequences as well as the tension that follows. However, if your peace of mind is important to you, and if peace is more valuable to you than any other benefit, then a wise person chooses the greater benefit. Therefore, there are situations in which you simply do not need to respond. You do not have to answer every message they send. You do not even have to respond to every insult. You do not need to answer every sarcastic remark they make. Sometimes, conscious silence is the strongest response. My dear friends, we often do not use this technique. We ourselves become the cause of arguments. We make our conflicts and tensions worse. With these kinds of people, create distance. Maintain healthy distance. I am not saying that you should necessarily cut them off. Sometimes the person may be a close member of your family, and you simply cannot cut off the relationship. But you can create healthy distance. If you see that constant communication is continually harming you, reduce that communication. Manage it. Reducing the amount of time you spend communicating with someone is completely natural. This distance can be physical or time-based. It can also be emotional. And if you see that a person is genuinely making your life unbearable, it may become necessary, at some point, to completely cut off the relationship. Do not forget the importance of protecting your mental health. This is not selfishness. It is a form of responsibility toward ourselves. We have a responsibility to keep our mind and spirit healthy. Do not allow other people to take control of this game. Do not allow control over your mental and emotional well-being to fall into the hands of people who are not qualified to have it and who do not have your best interests at heart. So, do not make several mistakes. First, do not try to change the toxic person. That is who they are. Second, do not constantly try to prove your innocence to these people. Third, stop getting involved in endless arguments. And do not put too much hope in the idea that one day they will suddenly change. Do not rely on that possibility too much. Continue with your own approach. Do not ruin every day of your life by constantly holding on to these hopes. Then you look around and realize, this person has been like this for 20 years. They have been like this for 10 years. Adopt a managed and controlled approach. And be careful not to sacrifice your own peace of mind simply to keep other people satisfied. If the toxic person we are talking about is someone close to you, then naturally it becomes much more difficult. The hardest part of the situation is precisely this. It is not always possible to cut off a relationship. When it comes to your parents, your spouse, your colleague, or your business partner, what can you do? Turn to a model based on clear boundaries. Maintain limited communication. Focus on preserving your peace. Choose what brings you the greater benefit. As I said, sometimes even if you are in the right, you may need to choose the greater benefit, which is your peace of mind. This is not someone you can change. Do not continue trying to change them. Let them follow their own way. Live your own life. Protect your peace. And if necessary, if you see that the situation has become so complicated and difficult, then it may be necessary to seek help from qualified counselors who specialize in these areas. Go to them. Use their help. Talk to them. And work through and resolve your problems. In any case, I hope this video has been important and useful to you. Please, share the channel link with anyone you think could benefit from these discussions. Please do this. Some people are a little careless about these things, or perhaps they are reluctant to share, or for whatever reason, they simply do not want to do it. I really don't know why. Personally, if I see someone somewhere doing something that is beneficial to society and beneficial to people, I both promote it myself and share the link, and I tell others to do the same. Life is temporary, and this world is so harsh. Its nature can be so merciless that we ourselves have to make it gentler. We can do that through empathy, through friendship, through eliminating many unnecessary conflicts and disputes, and through using these methods and techniques to manage our relationships and become more peaceful. Wherever you are, I wish you prosperity and well-being. Thank you all for your support and kindness. Please help by liking this video and leaving your thoughts in the comments so that, through YouTube's algorithm, this video can reach more people. Perhaps we can make someone's life a little better. With sincere regards, Amir Mehrdad Khosravi.